There we go. Ta-da-da! The state of routing. So I was preparing this presentation because React Router got released just a few weeks ago. In fact, it got released about the same week that React 19 came out. Now, React 19 was quite a history in the making. We were waiting for this for, 3-4 years. And now it's finally here. This is the first meeting where, React 19 is finally available. It's a big deal. And I said to myself, am I going to present on React 19? Perhaps. But I already did, I think, 4 or 5 talks about React 19 in the past because it was such a long wait. So I said, I need something a little bit different. So I decided to go with, React Router. And the reason why it's a big deal is because of this. If I go back to, this thing over here, I'm going to say NPM trends. So for people that don't know, NPM trends will compare the download of packages. And if I look at, this is very pale, in fact. Yeah, you're right. Let's put here what's called a React Router. Oh, I didn't write it correctly. That's going to be better. So this is the number of downloads of React Router. And you can see that weekly, there's about 10 million downloads, except during Christmas, where it drops. I guess you weren't working a lot during that week. Okay, and you can see, in the last 5 years, you can see the same thing. I guess people are taking off during Christmas time. But let's compare this with another package. So let's add this package. For example, let's compare it with 10-stack router. Yeah, do we remember how it's written? 10-stack React table 10-stack / route. It's not there. 10-stack router is not there. Why isn't it there? I guess I forgot the name of 10-stack router. Someone remembers? No, huh? I'm going to do a search on another tab and just add 10-stack router install, just to know how we install it with 10-stack / React router. So that's why I didn't get it. Okay, good. Okay, let's. Oh. Come on. Why is it? There we go. Okay, so I go over here to my 10-stack / React - router. I'm not sure why it doesn't seem to be working. Let's add. I'm sorry? I'm not sure why it's not working. It should. It's well, it's way down here. So obviously it's not very good. Man, this is blurry. I don't know if anyone can see this, but okay. Turn off the lights. Yeah, turn off the lights. Kill the lights.
Still out of focus.
Still out of focus. We need. It's not easy. That's okay.
The optics are bad. We'll send the optics.
Oh, that's good. That's better. I don't know what happened, but it's better now. I can read a little bit. That's okay. Obviously, I won't keep you here. So let me go back over here. So obviously, React Router is very popular. And this is why it's one of the most popular packages. And in fact, the people that built React Router were onto other technologies. They were building something where they believed that React needed a framework, and they built their own framework called Remix. But it never got any traction either. So if you look at the here for the Remix run React here, you can see that it's way down here, just a little bit above 10-stack router. So not a lot of traction either. So those people that built React Router said, you know what? Our biggest hit was React Router, and we're abandoning it, and we should not abandon it. We should, in fact, instead merge it with Remix, because all of the great new ideas we have should be put over here. And that's what they decided to do. They decided to merge the two projects.
Was it because Remix was just a thin wrapper over React Router?
Well, it's more than just a thin wrapper, but it is a wrapper. You're right. You'll see in a few slides. I'm going to explain that. But you're right. It was easy for them. It was kind of like the next step, saying we're going to, put them together. Yes.
I heard that Shopify is sponsoring agreement.
Yes.
So are they involved with this? We're gonna present it as well.
Exactly. So Shopify is also moving to React Router. Now the name Remix will still stay around, and in fact they're going to improve upon it, but not right now. If you look at the commits right now, they're still improving React Router, and Remix is kind of like sleeping, dormant. It'll come back, they say, but they haven't explained exactly what's the future of Remix. Is the future of Remix separate from React Router? It's not clear. Yeah. Yeah.
What you're saying is not true. Remix, GUI, React Router are exactly the same.
Yes.
So they are now one and the same. And what they said is that potentially they haven't announced that they may make changes to Remix in the future and relaunch Remix, but in the interim, there's no more Remix. If you want to,
yeah, there's no more Remix. In fact,
Remix and you React Router 7.
If you try to install Remix today, what's going to happen is that you're going to get the old version 2.15. So that's what you get. And what's happening here? There we go. So that's what you get. And this is not something that you probably want to use Remix 2.x. But there's a lot of people still developing for Remix 2, as you can see. It's still there. I mean, it won't disappear overnight. But he's right. On the blog post where they launched React Router, they're saying that for right now, the project Remix is off the table, but they're not redirecting. They're still, it's still available. There's still commits being done, just at a slower pace. So we'll have to see what's happening in the future with that. In fact, you can see that.
Is that going to be on the exam?
No, it's not going to be on the exam. Or perhaps it will. I know that there's a contest at the end, so pay attention.
It'll be a multiple point.
There we go. So my name is Éric. I've been doing this presentation for quite a few years. I own a company called React Academy Live, which does training on React, and it's kind of fun. The samples and slides were written for React 19, and that was a huge job. It's not completely finished, but it's a work in progress, as they say. Always fun. Okay, so this is the history of React Router and Remix. Oh, I just realized that we have words that are disappearing in this area here. But there you go. In 2014, React Router was created. It was a React library that handled routing in client apps. In 2021, Remix was created. It was a React framework that renders on the server based on React Router v6. In 2023, last year, or 2 years ago, Remix v2 was released. The framework was improved. And then finally, in 2024, that is in December 2024, so a few weeks ago, React Router v7 was released, and it merged both React Router and Remix. So when you install React Router v7, there's two modes. There's two modes and two sets of documentation. You can now use React Router in the new framework mode, which uses a Vite server or client SPA for single page application. or it's going to use a library mode, which is similar to the way we were using React Router previously. So if you're just upgrading a React Router application as is, and you're not touching a lot of stuff, probably the library mode will be perfect for you. But if you're creating a new project or you're migrating from Remix, in that case, you're going to use a framework mode because it's going to offer you a lot more features.
What was the extent of the developer defection after the merger?
Well, right now, there was no defection that was measurable. But the thing is, it just got released like 3 weeks ago. So obviously, people that have it installed in their projects will not see it unless they explicitly upgrade. This is a major version. So as you know, in React, with NPM, usually with NPM, you're just going to upgrade the minor version automatically, and the major versions, you need to migrate manually. And most people haven't migrated yet. That's to be expected if you think about it. It's going to take a while. I mean, I just started playing with it.
2025.
Yeah, we'll see it. We'll see in the future. My guess is that it will probably not affect it very, very much. But we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. It's hard to say right now. So the library mode is similar to previous versions. It's strictly client. There's no server needed. It's still relevant for good old apps that migrate from V6. It's good for single page apps. It's good for offline with sync architecture, where you're going to be offline and then you'll sync the data a little bit later on. It's good for local first interactions. It's all the goodness that we knew from React Router for a few years. And then we've got this new mode. Oops. Called the framework mode. There we go. It could have been named Remix v3. It's a full stack architecture with server-side rendering. It allows pre-rendering, which is similar to static site generation. This is one of the features that I love very much, because this was one of the reasons why I couldn't adopt it previously. I wanted that feature, and now they have it. And I'm kind of like, okay, no, yeah. I wasn't, on board with using Remix, but now, yeah, I will use Remix, I think, because of that. It's going to use the Vite bundler and the dev server integration, so it's going to be fast. And there's going to be hot module replacement, so the dev changes, when you do a developer change, it's going to keep the state. There is automatic code splitting. There is some conventions for the route that make it compatible with type safety. Those conventions can be based on the file system or on config. You've got data loading and actions that are also compatible with type safety now. There's automatic revalidation of pages, data after actions, which means that it's going to update the data on an update. There's this thing called server-side rendering, single-page application, static rendering strategies. So, as I told you, this was, for me, the static rendering was a big deal. There's the API for the pending state and optimistic UI, spinners and guests. And finally, there are deployment adapters, so you can deploy to Cloudflare. Oh, there's a missing F there. Netlify, AWS, and so on. So, wow. One of the big things about React Router since V6 is that they have this concept of layout, where they're going to say, when we have this kind of URL that's separated, like example.com/sales/invoice/ and a number there. This is going to represent something interesting. It could represent a single component, but it could represent instead multiple components. Those components that that you want to show, we're going to call them either route components, so the bottom component is going to be called the route component, but the other ones that show a larger piece are going to be called layout components. And the layout components will allow you to essentially have a region. So this is the root region, example.com, that's the root, and it's the whole page, where we essentially call the root.js file and we fetch some data. And over here, and over here we've got the sales part. The sales part is this middle part here with some code and some data. And then we have invoices. And invoices, we have only this section here. And it's going to have some code and some data. And then finally, there's this invoice with a number of an invoice. And there we go. It's this part over here with some code and some data. So this is one of the big things where they do things a little bit differently compared to other routers. One of the big things about this is that we're going to use fetch in the components in React, and we isolate that fetch either in a hook called useEffect or the new use API, which is similar to a hook. But with React Router, we don't use those strategies. With React Router, we can use what's called a loader to read, an action to modify, and this will be called by the router itself before even loading the component. So then the component will have this data available through the props or through a hook, depending if we're using the library or the framework. And finally, React Router can suspend if the data is not available. So this philosophy is quite elegant. So I have here a very small demo. It's not a very, very involved one because originally I wanted to use the demo that the official demo that they're using for a React Router. And their demo, they have a YouTube video, and the guy is copying, pasting code. And even by copying, pasting the code, his presentation is 50 minutes long, and I've only got 20 minutes. So obviously, I don't have time for that.
So you're going to copy and paste too?
Yeah, I will copy and paste too. But it's going to be a simpler demo than them. It's going to be, very, very simple. So let's go to that window over here. This one. There we go. So this is my project, and it's already done. So obviously, it's going to be easier to do. So this is using React Router in framework mode. So obviously, it looks like code. Not very interesting. I'm going to increase the size because obviously this is very small. There we go. And I'm going to show a little bit of the code here. I'm going to be very, very quick about that. So this is high level. So you can see that we're going to be using, if I go a little bit lower here, we're going to be using React 19, and we're going to be using React Router. This is typical. But because we're using the framework version of React Router, we're adding some new stuff. So if we just want to do something very, very simple, a library, this is going to be sufficient. And if we want to go framework, we add additional dependencies here. You can see we have a node and a serve one. You're going to be wondering what's the difference between the two. It depends. Are we in dev mode or are we, in release mode? So one is going to be for serve mode. Serve mode is dev, and node mode is for deployment. Wonderful. Okay. Then we have over here we have our vite config. The vite config is going to be all the configuration needed to configure vite. Usually for a React project, it's just going to be React. But here we're going to configure this not for regular React, but for a React router instead, which means that it's going to be configured differently than the boilerplate that we get usually. One of the biggest differences, which threw me off the first time I loaded this, was there's no index.html. Usually in a Vite project, there's going to be an index.html page that has a single div in it, and in that div it's called the root div, and that's going to be where we're going to, how could I say, we're going to post the HTML code in there. And I say post, I should say generate. We're going to generate the HTML in there. But here, that's not what we're doing at all. Here, we don't have an index.html anymore because this React router thing here is going to configure Vite to just call up something called the root. And it's going to call the root instead. Anything else I need to tell you about that? Yeah, there are additional config files if we need to use, for example, TypeScript or Tailwind, or even here the React router config. There we go. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my app folder. You can see here my app folder. It has layout, it has routes, and it has over here something called root. This is my starting point. So inside of root, we have some imports at the top. Nothing, unusual. But if I go down a little bit more, we've got this special component called layout. And this component called layout is going to be the basic layout of my page using HTML, head, meta, body, and so on. Anything special I need to tell you about this layout component? No, nothing special, but this is going to be like my HTML. My basic HTML is in there. We can see over here we've got also another entry point. This is going to be the default export. This default export is called app. And here we're just saying return the outlet. Outlet is going to be the content that we want to show inside of the layout. Exactly. So inside the layout, we want to display the outlet. We've got some error boundary if we need to display some errors, like a 404 error or something else. And then finally, we have here our home page, or not a home page. We have we just have a boilerplate to show the, how could I say, the page.
The example that you gave, the outlet would be your invoice, is that right?
Yeah, it'd be the invoice. In this case, we're going to display a list of messages. So for that to work, let's go over here to routes. So this is my routing, and this is going to be a very simple JSON object. This JSON object is going to tell us that we need a layout that's provided by navbar. We need then 3 routes, one for the index, one for mail, one for post, post ID, destroy. So using this, we can go even further than that. We could, say inside of that, we're going to create another subroute and another, another thing inside of a layout if we want to. So we could have multiple layers of layouts if we wanted to. Yeah, we can add over here, for example, layout. And here we could have something like, and I could have a name for my layout if I wanted to. And let's call that the layout sales. And then we'd have something like a component connected to that layout, and that component would be called sales.ts. Now this file doesn't exist, so obviously, oh, sorry about that. This file doesn't exist, sales.ts, so this won't work. Sorry about that. I'm trying to type while I'm standing up, and it's a bad thing to do. Don't code while you're standing up. But this is error code, but you get the idea. Here I get a layout, and inside of that layout, I could get some other index, some other route, and so on. And there you go. You'd have the ability to, have routes and sub-routes and so on. Now, this is error code, so I won't bother you with that, but I like this idea. And I think those squiggly, it's not here. It's over here. I'm going to put here inside of it. Yeah, that's the way you see the, yeah. So yeah, I need to put here the other routes that I need to put inside, or the other layouts that I need to put. So yeah, you could create a tree-like structure for this. Okay.
And one other point here.
Yeah.
Important feature that you don't have. Do you put routes outside of the layouts that don't have layouts?
Yes.
That only have actions or loaders in them?
Yes.
And can act as API endpoints.
Yes.
So if you need to do client-side fetches for whatever reason that you don't want to have on the server, you can do that. You have
In fact, that's the case for this guy over here. This guy over here is an API too. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Very well said. So now we can take a look at the code. For example, if I go over here to home, we can see here we've got some imports at the top, and then we've got our component home. But before the component home, we have two other exports. I mean, this export here is the action export, and this function over here is the loader export. And really, what this is doing, this is going to essentially call some code that's going to fetch some data. That's what it's doing. So now, instead of having my component being responsible for fetching the data, now it's the router that's responsible for fetching the data. In this particular case, since we're using the framework itself, it's going to fetch it on the server. So the server is going to do the fetch and then return my component with the results of the fetch. This is very nice.
And the update is built into the function, or?
No, the update, if I need to do some updates, we have this thing called over here action that's going to say, what are we going to do if there's, someone that, is trying to click on a button that wants to update something. And it's going to call up this action. So now you're going to be wondering what happens if I've got multiple actions. Well, the params here are to help you with that. You could say I've got a param in that button that's going to tell me that this button wants to modify this data this way or this data that way, and that way you can be more specific. And then one last thing that I'm going to do here.
Prefer the quick way of adding a function declares an API.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I prefer like the quick way of declaring a function and then you can call it from the route, things like that.
Yeah, a little bit like next, you mean?
No, like a server function.
Like a server function.
You can import from other places. Like I feel like that it works. But,
You're right. You could feel that way.
I feel like when you say the action, like by a parameter, I feel like it's becomes good at some point because you did that on that part.
I get that. Now let's I have one last one. We've got here the destroy post one. This is going to be, as you can see, something that's just going to essentially run this action here. It's going to delete the post and redirect. So essentially, this is a component that's going to just do some work and then redirect and do nothing else. And you can see here it returns null because it's redirecting, so it's not going to be doing anything else. Could be returning some JSON data and so on. This is an example of an action URL where someone types a URL and it's going to do something. So now let me run this very quickly. I'm just going to press O and open this website. So you can see here we've got our layout. So at the top we've got this bar. This is the layout bar. And then it's going to call the service that's going to put different posts in Latin. It's going to have a delete button here for each of those. And if I click on that delete, it's going to call up that URL, that route. And when I click on that route, it's going to say, are you sure? It's say yes. And then it's going to delete that message. I can delete the first one. First one is deleted. I can delete the other first one, and so on. And that's what it is. It's not a very impressive service because I didn't want to, have you for 30 minutes listening to me and rambling about that. But it's kind of nice. And now it's not for everyone. As this gentleman said, he prefers it the way we do it in Next, which is, fine and dandy too.
There's also the util developer template start, which has like you keep the file base running, and I feel like this is like a step back behind since you go back to config way, which is like really old, like not old, but like it's like previous generation of like framework phase. It's like go back.
So you've had the chance to work with 10 stack start.
I saw people like work with it and like.
Okay.
So I feel like, and also is the router type safe? Probably not. Right?
It is now. That's another big thing. That's a big change. Yeah.
Like I see files now, so I don't see like how it can be type safe. Is it because you have access to args and they are type safe?
Yeah. The thing is, they're using notations here to allow it to be type safe. They're using things like, if I go over here to data here, you can see that this is type safe. And if I go over here to my and I haven't been able to make it work. I don't know why. See over here, I'm able to get the data, get post, create empty post, and that works correctly. So this is type safe. And
what I mean is like when you like between routes, when you have like your ID like on your route, you know that there is an ID. And if you were to remove that route, it's no longer there. You won't compile because you know that there is on that route. Like the priority of the route. That's what 10 stack does. But yeah, that's pretty nice. I think
yeah, they're doing those things over here, like plus types, destroy post, and they're doing dynamic typing. But yeah, things are, I don't know why this thing is doing an error here. It says it cannot find module data, but it should be finding it, obviously, and I'm not sure why it's saying it's not finding it. If I click on quick fix, no, it's not explaining to me what I should be doing here. I'm not sure why it's not seeing it, because it's just here, just above it. So, yeah. So things, I've copied, text from the internet. So obviously I didn't have, the luxury of, playing with this for weeks on end. I wanted to do a quick demonstration about this, but it's, I think, kind of nice. And this is going to be probably what I'm going to be doing perhaps in a future presentation. Perhaps I'll compare it with 10 stack start because
I really hate the name.
yeah, it's not the best name, but
You should have kept it just 10 stack.
yeah. So I'll probably take a look at it and try to see how much different it is, and is it a big step forward or not, or
I think it's a step like.
yeah, probably, and that's okay. They have different reasons to exist, and some devs are going to prefer one way, Some other devs are going to prefer another way, and that's okay. It's all about what this needs to be doing. So I hope that you're not too much asleep because we're now done. So are there any questions? No. You've been a great audience. Thank you for being here.
What I could have asked you is this is not using is there a compiler on this one?
Well, there's the TypeScript compiler. There's also a CLI. There's a CLI to help you start the build process and so on.
Like in React 19, there's like the React compiler which helps you like with the Blender, like. So I thought React 19.
Oh yes, you were talking about the compiler from React 19. Yeah, well, this could be using it.
Could be. It's not included yet.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to be included in React 19.
it's not included in React 19. It was always supposed to be the case. In fact, on the project page, it says that it's going to be released 6 months after the release of React 19. So it was always supposed to be like an out-of-band release.
Yeah, it's not like something about like how they handle like suspense or something. And it's like they tried to use it like to release it, but there was deaf people that were.
Yeah.